naked men in them and stuff like that, and so I was a little bit wary of them. And I wanted to make sure I was never in a room alone with him. But, I didn't want to be seen as a future role player or something in one of these films. He did these huge paintings as big as this wall, these crazy looking paintings with these big abstract, colorful brushstrokes, primary colors. And all throughout elementary school and high school and college, even up to that point, I've been doing these really tight little pencil renderings and very realistic paintings. And because I thought if you're an artist, you better make it look real, and that's the only way to do things. And I saw these crazy looking paintings, and I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. But at the same time, I loved realism, and if I did a painting of somebody or something, I wanted it to look like that individual or thing. So I spent the next 10 or 15 years trying to mesh those two different things together, and this style that I've come up with now is kind of the fruition of that, hopefully. And it's still kind of an ongoing thing, but in those days I still couldn't figure out what I was going to paint, because any subject that I chose to paint back in those days, everybody in the art department thought was just the silliest thing ever. And people were just drawing and painting off-the-wall things. And so I think when you're surrounded by a group of people, you get involved in this clique where you think that if you're not doing what everybody else is doing, that you're somehow uncool. So I felt kind of lost and out of place. But I was still happy in the fraternity house, drinking beer and chasing girls around with all the other guys, so I didn't worry about it a whole lot. Until the point when my fraternity brothers started calling me Grandpa. And then I think they did an intervention. They said, "Look, Steve, you've been living in the fraternity house for 7 years now." A lot of the guys are getting together and starting to talk. Don't you think it's time you moved on? You know, I didn't have a lot of prospects for a career or anything like that, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. So my best friend, Rob Matry, sitting over here in the corner, he had a trust fund. We thought it was all the money in the world back then. You know, looking back, we realized it wasn't that much. But he had a small trust fund. He said, "Why don't we move to New York? You don't need a car." And you know, I said, "Oh." I said, "That's the most genius thing I've ever heard in my life." Because I didn't have the money to buy a car. And I knew if I went to Atlanta, I would never be able to get a job because I wouldn't be able to drive there. So why not move to a town where you don't need a car? And so we did. And it was brilliant, Rob. So we moved to New York, and we were also musicians. I'm a great musician. Rob's a great vocalist too, right, Rob? In our minds. And so we bought all this music equipment, and our goal was to go to New York and we were going to become rock stars. And Rob wasn't a really good singer, but he had all the money and he bought all the equipment, so he decided he was going to be the singer. So we moved to New York, and I shouldn't say that in front of her. But so we moved to New York, and you know, when you go to New York, and also I thought I was going to be an artist and try to figure out the art thing, figure out what to paint. But you spend so much time actually working odd jobs when you're in the city that by the time you get home, you're so worn out. I think I painted one painting the entire time I was in New York. And so we'd been there for a while, and I was selling women's shoes at the time, and I thought selling women's shoes would be a great way to meet girls. And it's not. If women are looking at shoes, they're not looking at you. So if any of you guys are thinking about that line of work, I've already done the market research. And so if I start ragging too long, you just got to tell me. So Rob said, you know, we better get back to Atlanta. At least we can afford to eat there. I think we've gone through most of the trust fund. And so we moved back to Atlanta with our tails tucked between our legs. And I moved into a bunch of my friend brothers who rented this apartment over there across from Grady High School. And what I would do, I just moved into their basement. And when they went to work every day, I would dig change out of the couch just to eat lunch every day. And it's amazing how much change people drop in the couch. So I managed to eat every day. And then a friend of mine from Macon called and said he was opening a restaurant in Atlanta, where South City Kitchen is now. But who knows what's there now? These restaurants turn over so much. But he said, I need a bunch of paintings to cover the walls, and I need 10 or 15 paintings to cover the walls. I said, oh, that sounds great, I'll do it. when do you need them? He said, oh, we need them Friday. So I was forced into this style really by necessity. I had to paint a lot of paintings, I had to paint them quickly. And at that time, I still wasn't sure what I was going to paint. I didn't know what my subject matter would be. So I chose my favorite subject from college, which was history, and just started painting historical icons, and I had to do them quickly. And so they had to be these quick, spontaneous brush strokes. And we hung them up in the restaurant, and I was bartending at the restaurant too. And then one day when I wasn't there, one of the waiters called and said, hey, this guy came in, and he had a Rolls Royce, and he wants you to call him. And I was hoping it was about artwork. I was hoping he wasn't another filmmaker or something. He ended up as a guy named Bob Steed. Some of you may have heard of him from King and Spalding. And so he asked me to come over to his house to talk to him. And I went in, and there's this guy in this black turtleneck, and he has this big, bushy head of white hair, very kind of chunky looking guy, and he had this real scrawny, skinny wife. And then I looked on the ground, there was a stack, and this has nothing to do with anything. I don't know why I'm putting this. I mean, really, my goal was to try to get to the business aspect of this and but it's so fascinating. When I went to his house, I looked in the corner of one of the rooms, there's a stack of Playboys about this high in the ground. And I was like, God, well, these guys might be into something really strange, and they might think I might try. So, I was a little wary, so I made sure I stayed between the door and Bob. But it ended up, he wanted me to do a painting of Alexander King and Jack Spalding, the founders of King and Spalding. And that's how I got my career started in Atlanta, as I did the two founders. And then I started doing a lot of paintings for people in the firm, and my career started kind of snowballing from there. And Atlanta, the thing that makes Atlanta different, I don't know if I would have been successful in any other community in the country, because people in Atlanta seem to have networks of friends that people in other cities, especially in the Northeast, don't seem to have, and everybody's connected to someone else. So word of mouth got going. I was painting portraits just all over the place. I was doing them very quickly and very cheaply. And I just covered the whole city, and that's how I, at the same time, created a big client base. And so that's, I always tell young artists now, if you want to make a living, just paint a bunch of portraits and then worry about selling the other stuff later on. But at the same time I was painting my historical icons, I could never find a gallery to show my work. So I put the chocolate with the peanut butter and said, Rob, you still had a little trust fund left. I said, why don't you open an art gallery? And so we did that, and that's how we kept growing the business over the years. And I think a lot of mistakes that I have all these artist friends of mine from Athens that are still living in Athens. I'm not trying to talk about, I'm going to get in trouble for this too, but they're working in coffee shops and they sit around and talk about how angry they are that people don't understand or appreciate their work, but they're not willing to adapt to the customer, and they almost have contempt for the customer sometimes. And I just want you to know, I'm willing to do anything for you. So, there's nothing out there I won't paint. And so, the attitudes in art with artists today are so strange to me. And I think that one thing that really struck me is I was walking through the Metropolitan Museum of Art one day, and I walked in. There's this huge canvas, and it's just a solid blue canvas, just nothing on it but solid blue. And some of you have probably seen this. It's in the modern wing of the Met. And of course, the obvious thing that you think of is, well, I could paint that. But then if you say that out loud, people just frown on you like you're some sort of